Hello and welcome to the Wildcard Rewind podcast. Yes, it is back. Fantasy football is back. So let's get straight into week one.
I just want to rewind to when we were young and hard. Back to all those good times. Take me back to the start.
Yes, it is Monday. We are back. We've got the gang together for the first time in a couple of weeks. I've been sunning it up in sunny Greece. But first of all, I'd like to welcome both of my co-hosts, and I've been asked to do this to you first, Lewis. So, Lewis, how you doing, mate?
Doing very, very well. The only person here whose team won yesterday, which is always a nice way to start. Now, obviously, for you, Paul, as a Cardinals fan, that was kind of something that you expected. But for the lovely Hannah, I'm not sure that it was. How are you feeling today, Hannah?
I'm feeling terrible. I'm very, very upset. The offense was hideous.
I have something that might cheer you up. I've got a little game that you might want to play.
Oh God.
Which I thought you might enjoy.
I don't think you will want to play.
So it's just a little either or. There's a few questions to go by, and obviously you can get a point per question. So I've just pulled these together out of nowhere, really. The players that I've gone for. So first question: who had more passing yards week one? Joe Burrow or Josh Dobbs, elite starter for the Cardinals?
Oh, this is a really tough one because Joe Burrow played really, really well yesterday. But I'm going to have to say Josh Dobbs.
Oh, that's correct. That is correct. So that's 1 point. On to question two. Who had more receptions yesterday? Was it T. Higgins or Jake Funk?
I knew T. Higgins was going to come up. All right, he was having a bad day. Give him a break.
So Jake Funk then?
Yes.
Can I just ask, how many did T. Higgins have?
0.
Yeah. So can I ask you a question, Hannah? Who had more receptions yesterday? Was it Desmond Ridder or T. Higgins?
Or was it CJ Stroud or T. Higgins?
That start to the week is brilliant. So just a final question. You're on 2 points so far. Who had more receiving yards in week one? The entire Bengals offense, or Tutu Atwell in the second half versus Seattle?
I mean, this is just really mean, isn't it? Obviously, the Bengals were terrible. I understand that. We didn't even get a single touchdown. Kyron Williams had more touchdowns than the whole of the Bengals offense. Although we did get one interception.
That's pretty good.
This was okay.
So just to wrap up, because you've gone for Kyron Williams as well, I'm going to give you a bonus point, which puts you on 4 points, which is more points than the Bengals scored in week one.
I mean, this is just not very fair, is it? Come on now. I know they had a terrible time. Look, Joe Burrow's been injured. You need to give him a moment. He's now the richest player in NFL history.
Stop trying.
Money well spent. Money well spent. They
Yeah.
benched him in the fourth quarter. $275 million to bench him in the fourth quarter.
But to be fair, why do you need to try anymore? You've got the money.
Yeah, I suppose.
He's secured that bag. If someone
exactly-
gave me a
it's
massive pay rise,
logical.
I'd stop trying.
Exactly. What? I mean, who needs a Super Bowl when you've got the bag?
But on a lighter note, Hannah, it could be worse.
Could it?
Yeah. You could have been shut out by the Cowboys.
That's true. Although I feel like that would feel a bit more kind of justified because the Cowboys are actually decent, whereas the Browns are not even that great. I think it still feels worse. But hey, on to week 2.
Yeah, that's it.
At least the Ravens are banged up, so that's going to give us one little glimmer of hope that we could actually catch some balls next week.
Fingers crossed to you. But speaking of the Ravens, we're good at these segues. That's going to take us straight into our first bit where we're going to talk of the big news of the week. So no better place to start than the biggest news of the weekend, which is J.K. Dobbins, unfortunately, He suffered another season-ending injury. So my question is, if you are the Dobbins owner, which I am in a lot of leagues because I was very wide receiver heavy and taking J.K. Dobbins a bit later on, what are you doing now? So which Ravens running back do you want? Do you want Justice Hill, who had 8 rushes for 9 yards and 2 touchdowns, or the Gus Bus, who had 8 rushing attempts for 32 yards and no touchdowns? So which one do you think you'd like to pick up?
Well, both are really appealing, right? You know, those stat lines look fantastic, although to be fair, Hill did have 2 touchdowns. Look, I feel really, really like gutted for J.K. Dobbins. That poor guy, like he just seems to get injury after injury after injury. Like he just doesn't seem to be able to catch a break. And Achilles really scare me, actually. So, you know, I hope things go okay with him and he does get back. But, you know, often it is very challenging to get back to, you know, previous production when you've done an Achilles. So that's a massive, massive shame. But to be honest, look, we're on week 1. You know, at the minute, the waiver wire should be hopefully pretty stacked. So you might have quite a few options, and you don't necessarily have to just stick to the Ravens running back room. You know, for me, if I had the option and there was a few different players on the waivers, if I could, I would look at either going to get Kenneth Gainwell. So he's currently only 35% rostered on Sleeper, so he should be on some waiver wire somewhere, maybe not in deep leagues, but certainly in your shallower benches. And in these shallower benches leagues as well, you might also find Tyler Algier. And he obviously was in quite a kind of 2 running back committee really yesterday, which I was a little bit surprised about. I still think he's going to have some sort of fantasy value, and I think potentially even more than these guys on the Ravens. He's only 50% rostered, so he is out there for some leagues. So I personally would be looking at kind of those 2 guys over Hill or Gus. If there aren't any better options, and these are the only kind of 2 viable running backs on the waiver wire, I would definitely put bids in for both. I think ultimately it's probably going to be a bit of a kind of mess committee approach, and you're probably not going to know who's going to be the best on a weekly basis. But I would probably maybe lean Hill over Gus, just because it looks like potentially he could get some receiving work and maybe the higher value touches, but neither are massively appealing to me. This sounds quite terrible. I don't want an injury, but I would probably be keeping my eye out for other running backs that might be becoming more relevant than picking up these guys and thinking that they're going to be my saviour for the season. As I say, it's terrible for Dobbins, but I do think this is kind of a good week for it to have happened from a fantasy perspective, because waivers are still quite stacked with some of these high value backups, or you know, players that have some sort of role, even if it's small at the moment, that could potentially become bigger over the next few weeks. So I think there should hopefully be more options than just these 2 guys. But if they're the only choice, of course I'm going to get them because I'm desperate, but I wouldn't expect them to be kind of my saviours.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you, to be honest. Do you think, so I'm going to carry on with the Ravens here a little bit. Do you think now that the Ravens have lost J.K. Dobbins that they now go to this sort of pass heavy thing that they said? They were obviously saying that they were going to pass the ball more, and we were all like, oh yeah, they're just saying that they're going to be this team that rushes first every time. But I think now they've been put into that position where they're going to kind of have to pass it more than they would run it, because yeah, they've got Lamar Jackson, but apart from that, you know, I don't think they've got that good running back now that they can sort of rely on. I think they're now forced into that more pass heavy kind of team that they said they were going to be. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think quite possibly, you know, obviously their wide receiver core is much, much better than historically. Obviously, J.K. Dobbins went out a couple of years ago with the knee injury, and Gus went out as well, and they kind of cobbled it together at that point. Now, obviously, new offensive coordinator. So I think it's more likely that they will go more pass heavy, but I do still think they will have a role. But yeah, I think it probably will be more diminished than if Dobbins was there, and obviously that means that should be good for the rest of the pass catchers. You know, that wide receiver core did look pretty good at the weekend. Mark Andrews should be hopefully coming back next week, although I don't mind if he wants another week off, that's fine by me. So, yes, ultimately they might throw it, but I do think they'll still want to use, I would probably say, they might want to use Lamar rushing a bit more. I know they want to protect him and he's had injuries, but he is, a great running weapon for them. So they may have to lean into that a little bit more than they kind of would have wanted to, just because they have fewer options.
Yeah.
I think a really interesting thing from my perspective is so first of all, I could see them going out and picking up another running back, but part of the issue is that they don't have anyone that can catch the ball out of the backfield now. Like J.K. Dobbins was all right at it. Gus Edwards and Justice Hill are not particularly good at that. The player that I actually think really could be a beneficiary, and you touched upon it already with how good the wide receiver core looked in the first week. Zay Flowers had an average depth target of 2.7 yards. He can absolutely become essentially the passing down back for them. And I think really kind of get a lot more volume because of the loss of J.K. Dobbins, even though it's not, it's not a direct replacement, but actually that kind of underneath work and the more gadgety work, I think he could see a lot more volume. And I'm saying that he got double-digit targets in week 1, so a lot more volume is something to be very excited about for him.
Or do you think maybe they go and pick up Kareem Hunt?
I'm not convinced, but go on, Lewis.
I think the Ravens as an organization generally tend to stay away from players with domestic violence history. So I think Kareem Hunt probably not. Leonard Fournette maybe. I was actually having a look about veteran backs who are still available as free agents that are kind of plus in the passing game. If they decided, okay, we're going to recreate J.K. Dobbins in the aggregate, we're going to have Gus Edwards early down, and then we're going to bring in a passing down back. And actually, J.D. McKissick and Gio Bernard are still out there. So I actually wouldn't be surprised if they went and targeted one of them instead of one of the more sort of, I was going to say elite, but elite in 2018 running backs that are available.
Yeah, I just went straight for Kareem Hunt because I think he was a very good pass catching back. In his day. So he was just the first name that popped in my head as a pass catching back. Go on, Hannah. Do you want to add something before we move on?
Just because, obviously, I know we're talking about this a lot, and yes, it was a different offensive coordinator historically, but they haven't historically targeted their running backs a lot. As I say, things have changed. Of course, as a new OC, he might want to do that, but I think it's likely that they don't see that as a priority. So I would be surprised if they picked anyone up. They've already got Melvin Gordon. Yes, I know he's on his last legs, but he is still a body there. John Harbaugh has said this evening, we're happy with what we've got. Now, obviously, they're going to say that because they want to support the running backs on the roster. But I would be surprised if they pick up anyone of any kind of fantasy value. They might pick up a body, but I couldn't imagine them picking up anyone. I think they're going to cobble it together and hope that everyone else kind of holds the team up. Already they've lost quite a few other players on the defensive side as well. And I think potentially, is it one of their offensive linemen for a little while? So I think they're already quite banged up. So I think they're just kind of going to try and stem the tide for now rather than focusing on extra running backs. But I might be wrong.
Hopefully they sort themselves out because I'm going to see them in London, so I want to see them at their best, But yeah, we'll move on. We won't spend as long on this one, but honestly, Lewis, I haven't done this on purpose, but we're going to talk things Cooper Kupp. He's been moved on to IR, so I just want to sort of get your opinion on what we're sort of doing with Cooper Kupp, because obviously, if you took Cooper Kupp, you took him in the first round, so I feel like to handcuff a player like that is not quite the same as you do with a running back. A running back will step into a 3-down role or something like that, whereas I don't. I'm quite struggling with all these shares I've got of Cooper Kupp now because I'm kind of feeling that I'm massively missing something at wide receiver. So, what are you doing as a Cooper Kupp owner, and are we now going to start talking about Cooper Kupp as somebody who could come back for the second half of the season and be a league winner if you can survive this shitstorm for the next sort of few weeks,
Yeah, I think to answer the second question first, I think the worry was always that the Rams were going to be so bad that we were just going to keep Cooper Cup out for the season if he went on to IR. Actually, I joke about sort of how great the Rams looked yesterday, but we played very well, and that's with sort of piecing it together on offense and very much on defense as well. So actually, the Rams being good is really good for you if you're a Cooper Cup owner because it means that we'll want to bring him back. I definitely think he can be a league winner because we know what he can be. The worry with kind of the tightrope procedure and then the hamstring issues is that it will never fully come back, and this could be the decline of Cooper Cup. But I still definitely think in redraft you can be a league winner. In terms of the other point about kind of handcuffing at wide receiver, and this is something I've spent a lot of the last few weeks saying, we don't handcuff at wide receiver, we can do it at running back. Where it's a volume-based position, we can do it at quarterback because we know who's going to start. Can't do it at wide receiver. Maybe on the Rams we can handcuff at wide receiver. Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell both went over 100 yards, and there's Van Jefferson had a really bad drop. Tyler Higbee's always going to be an option, but there's nothing really else there. Puka Nacua looked fantastic and is going to be on waivers in your league. So actually, it's a broader point about just trying to play the waiver wire as smartly as possible to cover for Cooper Cup in the interim. But actually targeting someone like Puka Nacua as a star is probably a good place to go.
Yeah. I do like Puka Nacua, and let's be honest, I think we're in Matt's dream now. This is his world. He's been banging on about Puka Nacua for a long time now, hasn't he? Our good friend Matt. Hannah, anything to add on the Cooper Cup before we move on?
I don't think so. Look, if you got him, you probably don't have much of a, you don't want to drop him, so you're going to keep him. I would be scared when he first comes back. In terms of, is he going to be on a pitch count? Is he ever going to make it back in time for any kind of fantasy season? I don't know, exactly what's going on with him, how long, they say a minimum of 4 games, obviously, because they can't come off IR before then, but I don't actually know whether he's going to come off then or later, or I would fear that potentially this is a lost season for Cooper Cup in terms of him being a fantasy stud, but I could be wrong there and he comes back in week 5 and he's fantastic, but I think he's had some complications, which makes me nervous that we're going to struggle, to put him in our lineups this season and feel confident about him. So obviously going to keep him on IR, but I personally am behaving as if he's not coming back this season and trying to manage my team according to that. So if he comes back, great, massive bonus for me, extra player. Hopefully he's that stud that we all know and love. But if he doesn't, I'm not disappointed. I'm not right, I'm just holding out for him to come back in week 5. I've made other plans. This is the week when waivers are full. As soon as kind of next 2 weeks come, they're going to be empty. So you need to really get those waivers in, try and get Puka Nacua or whoever you feel is going to be able to fill that void. I know you're never going to be able to fill a Cooper Cup sized hole, but you just need someone who you think is either a rising person or is certainly going to be able to give you enough fantasy points to kind of keep you afloat and let everyone else kind of get your team, lifted up. I think you've got to be really savvy on the waivers, and I think you have to treat like he's out for the season.
Yeah, that's a good point. But now we're going to move into the next segment, which is Rewind the Tape. In this segment, we're going to discuss things that we have learned from the previous week that helped us as fantasy managers. So, Lewis, we're going to come straight to you, mate. What's your Rewind the Tape?
Yeah, I think a really big one for me is sort of when I'm looking at this in terms of what's really helped me develop as a fantasy manager, I often try and look at things outside of specific players or specific matchups or that sort of thing, and try and look at the broader landscape and what can you find there that's going to help you. And the point that I came up with looking from last week is over under totals are incredibly important for fantasy football and should be a huge part of your process in helping you decide who to play and kind of which matchups to target. So obviously last week, and I've just looked at the game with the higher over under point total and 2 games with the lowest. In the Dolphins Chargers, we knew in advance that was going to be a high scoring affair. There's just so much opportunity for kind of quick pace on offense, lots of opportunity for scoring. Obviously, Tyreek Hill exploded, but Jaden Waddle actually had a good game as well. Raheem Mostert's got a touchdown. Tua was the QB1 on the week. Justin Herbert was the QB5 on the week. Keenan Allen was still good. Austin Eckler did amazingly. basically everyone smashed in that game, and we could have predicted that in advance because the over/under told us that this was going to be a really high scoring game. Then when we look at the two lowest, so Falcons, Panthers, and Cardinals, Commanders were the two lowest. Neither of them really produced many great options. I think, Tyler Algier and Bijan did all right, but then they're counterbalanced by the fact that Kyle Pitts and Drake London were basically unstartable. In the Cardinals Commanders game, Brian Robinson scored a touchdown. Like, especially at quarterback, there were no startable options from those four teams. And I think that's a key thing as well, is like looking at the quarterbacks in low over under points totals can help you predict scoring a little bit, but just trying to target matchups with a really high over under is a really good thing to focus on to help you pick players that are like more likely going to smash next week.
Absolutely love that. And Hannah, what is yours?
Well, mine was more player based, but I suppose I could make it a bigger concept. So the thing that I thought of was obviously Chigakonkwo was one of those sleeper, late round tight ends that people thought would potentially break out this season and become like some sort of fantasy star. Well, he had laid a massive egg this week and had 0 receptions and 0 fantasy points. But basically, kind of my overarching, I suppose, concept is look past the box score. So, if you went onto ESPN or anywhere, NFL, looked at the box score and you saw, oh, he laid a big fat egg, Chigakonkwo is going to be rubbish, and then you drop him. But actually, when you look a bit deeper, he played 82% of the team's snaps, which is actually even higher than the end of last season when he had that kind of great fantasy, few games. And they were playing the Saints. So last season they were the best team against tight ends. So he was always going to have a difficult matchup, but he played a high percentage of the snaps. He was on the field a lot of the time, and a lot of those he was running routes. So he wasn't doing a lot of blocking. So there's a high chance that he is not going to lay another egg next week. So you should definitely keep him and keep an eye on kind of how things progress with him. Because I think people kind of make the mistake of saying, oh, this player's, especially early in the season when we don't have a lot of information, they go, oh, he got 0. He's obviously not going to be very good for me this season. And they just drop them. And then a few weeks later, they break out. They go, oh, I shouldn't have dropped him. But if you looked a bit deeper and past the box score, you would have known that actually his usage means that it's likely that he is going to be fantasy relevant this season. It's just that he had a bad matchup, and unfortunately his 2 targets weren't that catchable.
I think this is a really interesting thing, and I think like looking at the underlying data. So I know we've been clowning on you for like T. Higgins' performance this week. T. Higgins had a 25.8% target share. He had 151 air yards, 8 targets. Like, that's not a player that's going to continue to put up 0 fantasy points. So it's just a really interesting one to then look at actually what's the actual story of this game beneath just the box score. I think this is a really good point. Yeah.
And it kind of ties into my point with what you were saying as well. So mine is try not. So we talk about how you react to everything and you're always on the ball and everything like that. But it's also try not to overreact, which I feel like everyone does in week 1. So like you're saying, Chig has scored 0 points and everyone's going, oh my God, it's going to be garbage. But actually, like you said, look deeper and you'll see that he's actually a relevant player. I'm looking at just going to name a couple of things here. The Steelers rushed the ball 10 times in that whole game. Yeah, that's okay. You can look at the box scores and look further. There's nothing to say that they're going to do it more, but they will. As a team, we know that they're going to rush the ball more than that. But you're not going to look at Najee Harris and go, oh, right, you're worthless now because you didn't do very well and everything like that. So try not to overreact. Joe Burrow getting benched in the 4th quarter.
You do that one on purpose in the fall. This is not fair. I'm not coming back. Today. You feel horrible.
But you know what I mean? Don't overreact. Don't overreact to the Bengals and how bad they were this week. Don't there are things that going forward, I'm going to throw it back on myself here, Hannah. The Cardinals are not going to get any better than what they were this week, okay? And they weren't great. There is nothing there for them to. There is nowhere to go for them, okay? But like the Bengals are going to turn it around. They're the Bengals, they're not a mediocre team, like you talked about with the Atlanta Falcons, and I think Drake London had like absolutely zero, and Kyle Pitts wasn't very relevant. Do I think that's going to be something that happens each week? No, I don't think it is. I think these players are going to have relevant roles in these teams, and I think it's more of week one is a bit mad. I think we were talking about before we came on here. Week one's a bit crazy. Don't overreact to it. Don't fall into this trap. Don't go, oh, he's obviously crap because he didn't do it week one. Bide your time. Week two, it will come to you. Has anyone got anything to add to that one? No? We all good? Right. We're going to go to the fantasy stud of the week. Here we're going to look at under the radar player who could overperform and exceed expectations in week two. But let's first look at how we did last week. And it's not looking so great. Hannah, your fantasy stud was Jahan Dotson.
I totally picked the wrong. Yeah, I picked the wrong game here, didn't I? Especially in your back ball.
5 receptions on 7 targets for 40 yards and no touchdowns. Wow, he must have been playing against a really hard defense. Giving him 9 PPR fantasy points altogether. Lewis, your fantasy stud was Marvin Jones. He unfortunately had a few drops and a fumble, so ended up with 2 receptions on 6 targets for 8 yards, giving him 0.8 PPR points. So, wow, am I glad I'm here to help you guys out? Okay,
I think a big one here is process, right? So Terry McLaurin scored better than Jahan Dotson. For me, and I'm trying to talk myself out of a really bad pick, but I was debating between Marvin Jones and Josh Reynolds. The process being that that someone else aside from Amon-Ra St. Brown would have to catch the ball. Josh Reynolds went for 80 yards and 10 PPR points. The process was still kind of all right. The pick was very bad.
No defending yourself here. You just did really bad. And I have to, so I'm just going to add this in, okay? Last week when I wasn't here, okay, I had it on the Dynasty show. I had it on this show. You were all just hammering the Cardinals and everything like this. You're going, yeah, pick everyone that's playing the Cardinals. So do you know what? In your faces, all of you in your faces.
You realize you still lost, Paul?
Yeah. That's fine. But you all targeted these players going, oh, they're playing the cards. They're going to go up. They're going to blow up and everything like that. And it didn't work. So in your face, all of you. Okay?
I think by week 3, it's definitely going to ring true. But I'll let you.
100%. I'm taking my victory lap while I can. Okay. But Hannah, so can you do any better this week? Who is your fantasy stud of the week?
Yeah, I think this could be it's either going to be like a smash or a complete disaster. But I have gone for Tajay Spears. Now, interestingly, he surprisingly outsnapped Derrick Henry in week 1, which I was very surprised about because obviously historically this running game has always gone through Derrick Henry. Now, we saw Spears do some really great work in the preseason, but I thought he would have less involvement in the offense kind of straight off. Now, obviously, Derrick Henry had the bigger opportunity share. He ultimately put up the more points, more rushing, and some pretty good receiving work. But this week, they're playing the Chargers, who are notoriously terrible against the run. So Tajay is having quite a reasonable snap percentage, and he's playing a D who's bad against the run. So I think, or I wouldn't be surprised if the Titans didn't kind of look to utilize both of these running backs and take advantage of the terrible Chargers run defense. And I think last season they were notorious for it. And I think, to be honest, it is it's already kind of overflowing into this season. So I still think they're going to be rubbish against the run this year. So I think there's a chance that Tajay Spears does outperform kind of what we expect of him. And in those really deep leagues where he's starting lots of players, I probably wouldn't be scared to put him in a flex spot. I mean, not in one of these kind of shorter bench or short starting, one flex spot, probably not. But these long kind of starting lineups, I mean, one where we start 4 wide receivers, 3 running backs, and like 4 flex. Well, if I put him in there, I wouldn't be scared to do that this week. I hope I'm right.
So what you're doing is you're picking the prince. So the king is taking his prince. So the master and the apprentice, and you've gone for the apprentice.
Well, obviously Derrick Henry doesn't really, I don't think he could count or be applicable for fantasy stud of the week. So I'm going for his apprentice.
Yeah, and do you know what? That's the whole point of this whole segment. This segment isn't to come here and go, who do you think is going to be really good this week? Oh, I think Derrick Henry's going to be really good. It's about picking the deeper players. I actually really liked Tajee Spears, and he would have been somebody that I would have picked if you hadn't have picked him. But Lewis, let's come to you. Let's see where you're going with this.
Yeah, it's sort of following the same spirit. I was debating between 2 Texans, between Nico Collins and Robert Woods. I've gone for Robert Woods, just because I think he's going to really offer a safety blanket for CJ Stroud in the underneath game, and he's so versatile as well. Such a good run blocker, which means he doesn't really have to leave the field. In week 1, only 7 players saw more targets than Robert Woods. He saw 10 targets in week 1, finished with 11.7 points in PPR. So obviously, not the sort of league-winning performance that you're looking for, but like it's not going to lose you a week either. I think we've seen Calvin Ridley dominate. Not to say they're similar players at all, but like against Indy last week, and that's who the Texans are playing next week. I think they seem sort of susceptible in the pass game, and obviously Robert Woods should be seeing sort of less of the elite coverage than less of the CB1 coverage than Nico Collins will probably end up matched up on. So I think he could be quite an interesting option. And like you say, I'm trying to find players that go a little bit under the radar. When I scouted CJ Stroud, he didn't seem to have the strongest arm throwing deep down the field. So I think someone that thrives underneath with sort of that, he's a really accurate quarterback. Robert Woods could be someone that you might actually be quite happy to start in a flex for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I like that Robert Woods take.
I think he has, like, if you took him in like the last 1 or 2 rounds in your draft, like I think it's fantastic value. We know that the Texans aren't going to be this kind of high, octane offense, but I think he's going to give you decent value in the flex spot for sure, and I think a decent floor.
Yeah, he's actually my most rostered dynasty player. I didn't realize that until I looked, because I was looking to see how many Puka Nacua shares I had, and he's my second most rostered dynasty player.
So your most rostered players are Puka Nacua from the Rams and Robert Woods, who's ex-Rams. Wow.
Yeah, okay. And if you want to see someone else as well, I think Van Jefferson was like 3rd or 4th. So Cooper Kupp's up there as well. I'm just a homer.
Yeah. Oh, they play for the Rams. Go
and sell your Rams players to Lewis, right?
Yeah. That's it. So with that, I'm gonna go for my fantasy stud of the week, and I'm gonna go for Jordan Addison. And so Jordan Addison, he played 58% of the snaps and had 6 targets, 4 receptions for 61 yards and a touchdown. Now, not elite numbers, there are people that put up more numbers than him, but what I've seen of him, he looked really good. And I think he's kind of got it easier than other players. Now, my reason for saying that is because the other side of the field is Justin Jefferson. So Justin Jefferson, and I've heard a few people talk about this in the offseason, is going to demand double coverage.
Yeah.
So Addison is always going to be in single coverage, or, just running around the field on his own, just going, I'm open, and nobody's going to leave Justin Jefferson in single man coverage, because if they do, they're just mental, So I think Justin Jefferson Jordan Addison is going to have himself quite a decent week. And I know they're playing the Eagles, which is always going to be a tough matchup. But we've just seen Kendrick Bourne have a similar game as what Addison did this week against the Eagles. And I'm all for that. All for that stretching of the field. Over the top. Long touchdown. Boom. Just you wait, you guys. I'm going to text you both as soon as it comes in. As soon as it comes in the first quarter, I'm going to text you both. Going, it's a good job I'm here to steady the ship.
Well, the Eagles have such a good run defense, and adding Jalen Carter to that, Jalen Carter looked amazing, and barely played any any snaps. And so I think definitely like the Vikings struggled to run the ball yesterday. So looking at options in the passing game, and as you say, going Justin Jefferson's obviously an easy pick, but Jordan Addison, I think, definitely could be someone that could smash going forwards.
Yeah, I agree. Do you agree with my pick, Anna?
Well,
you normally go, see, Paul, you got it wrong here.
Well, no,
You got it wrong.
the only thing that makes me slightly nervous, which I think ultimately is not going to happen for the rest of the season, I think maybe should have waited another couple of weeks, only because last week KJ Osborne was playing ahead of Jordan Addison, so he played more snaps than Jordan Addison did. Now, I think ultimately Jordan Addison is going to be the wide receiver 2 on this team, but so far he is not. He's not coming on the field as much as KJ Osborne. So I think there's a chance that he doesn't have as good a week. Well, I mean, he doesn't have that kind of stud week, if you know what I mean, because he's not in that wide receiver 2 role as of yet. Now, I think in 1, 2, 3 weeks' time, he's going to surpass KJ Osborne, particularly if he's going to catch all of his targets, and get open a lot so that, Kirk is trying to kind of seek him out. So I think maybe in 2 to 3 weeks, I think he's going to be like a massive stud. Next week, I'm still in I want to see a little bit more phase of Jordan Addison. I have him on a few of my teams and I'm not quite ready to put him in just yet.
You'll regret it.
I know, I might regret it. You're right.
But with that, we'll move on to the fantasy scare of the week. This is where we're going to look at a hyped up player who could underperform and upset us and our fantasy teams in week 2. So last week, Lewis' potential scare was Derrick Henry. He had 15 rush attempts for 63 yards and 2 receptions for 56 yards, but no touchdowns. He had 13.8 PPR points. Currently RB13 with Monday Night Football yet to play. Hannah's potential scare was Devontae Adams. He had 6 receptions for 66. Wow, that's really bad, isn't it? 6 for 66. That's the devil's number. And 0 touchdowns, and he had 12.6 PPR points. Currently wide receiver 26.
I think we've done all right there. Like so, and one of the things that I was looking at as well, like Derrick Henry had like over a third of that production on one screen pass. So without that, really would have been a letdown. But Derrick Henry finishing with like just under 14 points, Devontae Adams finishing with just under 13. Like, yeah, we haven't managed to call out players that have, we didn't go for Drake London or T Higgins, but sorry, Hannah. But like we've managed to.
Yet?
We've managed to pull out players that like have definitely disappointed a little bit. So I think we've done much better than we did with our fantasy studs.
Yeah, I think so, because ultimately we've drafted these as our running back 1, so top 12, and a running back and a wide receiver 1, also top 12, and neither of them made it. I mean, I'd be surprised if Derrick Henry was still running back 13 after Monday Night Football, and I would be surprised if Devontae Adams is still wide receiver 26. But either way, both have disappointed for what we expected from them.
Yeah,
agreed. I'll give you both of them. So Lewis, we'll come to you. And who is your fantasy scare of the week? And I love this one. You're going to cause a ripple in the matrix with this one.
I don't feel good about this, but I wanted to go bold. And so a lot of this is going to be really matchup based, right? And the Patriots pride themselves off taking away the thing that you want to do. And they say, you can beat us, but you have to beat us a way that you didn't want to beat us. And they're playing the Dolphins this week. So my scare of the week is last week's explosive wide receiver 1, Tyreek Hill. It does feel incredibly bold to say after he scored like 46 points last week. I just think that, like, knowing Bill Belichick, he will have watched that performance from the Dolphins last week and said, you can beat us, but Tyreek Hill is not going to beat us. You will have to find another way to do it. We're going to blanket him. I mean, he's incredibly difficult to take away just because of the nature of the speed. But like, I don't know. I think there's a world in which they go out of their way to just stop Tyreek Hill, and they say Jalen Waddle can beat us, Cedric Wilson can beat us, Braxton Berrios can beat us, but Tyreek Hill is not going to. And be bold, be brave. So yeah, Tyreek Hill.
From wide receiver 1 to wide receiver done. That's what you're going for, is it? Okay. You're comparing. I feel like you're comparing Bill Belichick to a bully. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
You can hang out. You can hang out in our group, but you can't bring your phone with you. You can't do that. You know what I mean? You can't have this. You can't have that. But I love it. I love it. I think it's bold. I think it's brave. I think you will be
wrong,
ridiculed for this next week, like, you know. But hey ho, we're here for the fun. Hannah, I so love this pick. Okay, I so love this pick. Who's your fantasy scare of the week?
So mine is, since we've just been talking bad about them all, of this whole program, I'm just going to go with the Bengals theme, and I'm going to say Joe Mixon.
The Bengals team. You should have just left it at the Bengals
just
team.
All of the Bengals.
No, that was weeks 1. Week 2, we're going to bounce back. Oh God, I'm hope anyway. But I don't think this is Joe Mixon's game. I know he wasn't drafted in like round 1 or anything, but people do have high expectations for him this season. They think potentially he could be this season's Josh Jacobs kind of thing. Definitely, I don't think it's going to be on this game. He has recently really struggled against the Ravens, obviously our division rival. Last season, he only played them twice because the last game he played against them was, I think, week 18. A lot of the starters didn't play, but he played them in week 5, and then obviously in that wildcard round game in the playoffs. In week 5, they held him to 14 attempts, 78 yards, 3 receptions, 10 yards, and no touchdowns. So he got 11.8 PPR points and finished as a running back 28. In the wildcard game, they held him to 11 attempts for 39 yards and 3 receptions for 17 yards, no touchdowns, pitiful. And that would have been 8.6 PPR points. So this is another, for some reason, the Bengals just don't seem to like playing their division opponents well. The Browns are like literally bogey team. We just can't seem to beat them. And the Ravens aren't that far behind, to be honest. We either have amazing games against them or quite terrible ones. And I think the defense knows how to make us struggle, as we saw in that wildcard game last season. We wouldn't have won had we not had that fumble. So I think that Joe Mixon is going to struggle.
Yeah, do you know what? I was going to sort of sit here and go, I think you're being a bit foolish. But actually, you've made a very valid point, and I'm inclined to stick with it. And I do like it. And I love the fact that you've picked a Bengals as a fantasy scare this week, even after your atrocious first week, But I've probably got a bit chalky with mine, and it's to do with what we were talking about earlier and the loss of J.K. Dobbins. I've known for the last couple of years, every time J.K. Dobbins goes down, everyone's sort of on the Gus bus, and he steps in. And I feel like people are going to fall into that trap that, I think people did it in week 1 with the Chiefs tight end. Remind me of his name, Noah Gray. Is it Noah Gray? Where everyone went, it's Noah Gray. Kelsey's gone down. Noah Gray's going to be Travis Kelce. And I think people are going to do that with Gus Edwards. And I think people are going to go, or we'll put Gus Edwards and Justice Hill in here. I think both of them, people are going to get a bit worried. People are going to go, I'm going to go and pick him up. He's going to be the next guy. And I think they're going to struggle, and believe it or not, Hannah, I actually think that the Bengals bounce back this week, and I think they have a point to prove now. I think it was so bad week 1 for them that they want to go and absolutely dominate this game, and I think I think we could potentially see one of them games where Joe Burrow stands at the the reporters board after and just sort of goes, I was just throwing it down there and I knew Chase was going to be there somewhere. You know, I think it's going to be one of them games where they're just going to set the field alight, and I think they're going to have a massive point to prove and go, we're not as bad as we were week one. We had an off day. This is who we are. We are here. So I think the Ravens really have a tough time this weekend. But
I hope so.
I normally get it wrong. So yeah, start Gus Edwards, you know. But with that, we'll jump onto the wild card of the week. And here we're going to give a hot take that could happen this week. So far, we've had mixed luck with last week's wildcard bets. Lewis thought that we might see Rashid. Why can't I say his name? Rashad Penny as an Eagles running back one.
Scratch went well, guys.
Yeah. Before they even took to the field, he was labelled as a healthy scratch. Do you know what? I've been playing fantasy football for a long time, and I've watched the NFL for a long time now. I still don't understand what a healthy scratch is. Okay, is it? We don't want you to play this week. Is it? Do you know what? You're nursing a little bit of a strain. We'll give you the week off, or is it? Do you know what? We actually don't like you. You're just a knob.
That's kind of the issue, isn't it? Like, it can be, we have no idea. It can be that he was nursing a little bit of an injury. It could just be as simple as we don't think you're good enough to be part of the running back rotation. And that's the worry.
Yeah. So he was labelled. Go on, Hannah. Did you want to add something about?
No, I genuinely don't understand that. Like, maybe he's had a bad camp or something, but any time he's been on the field, you know, historically, and he's been healthy, he's been fantastic. Like, I don't quite understand what they're doing at the moment. And DeAndre Swift wasn't that great, was he? Week one, you know.
No, Kenneth Gainwell was good though.
Yeah, but I mean, I really think you could do a Penny Gainwell 1-2 punch much better than a Swift Gainwell 1-2 punch. Like,
yeah.
I totally get that Penny does get injured often, but if he gets injured, he gets injured. You bring Swift in. Like, I don't know, maybe they're seeing something, you know, in training camp that we clearly haven't, but I just think it's a massive shame.
I was worried for Swift, to be fair. He was so cheap to trade for and everything like this. It was just, I was a little bit worried. I was a little bit like, maybe people are seeing something that we're not really seeing. And I'm a bit of a, I did like DeAndre Swift at the Lions, but I was worried for him this year, and he really didn't look great, to be fair. But yeah, so Lewis, you had Rashad Penny as the healthy scratch. And Hannah thought that Sam Howell will be a top 12 QB. Is currently correct because he is QB 12, but that is highly likely to change after Monday Night Football. Yet again, you were betting against the Cardinals. You know?
I'm taking that as a win because at the time of recording, he is a QB1, so I'm taking that as a point. You don't want to agree with me, but I'm going with it.
I'm trying to think of a very, very good reason why I can't allow it.
I mean,
because Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers are both going to outscore him is the reason why. But
but at the time of recording,
right now,
he's currently QB 12, and I can't take that away from you. So Lewis, you got it very wrong this week, and Hannah, you got it very right. You got it nailed.
Well, I'm not sure about that. To be honest, he was actually quite disappointing, wasn't he, really?
Yeah, he was awful.
Which I always knew was going to happen, but everyone poo-pooed me. So I was like, right, I'm getting on the bandwagon for week one, because I did actually think he'd have a good week one, because I thought, sorry, Paul, your Cardinals would struggle. But annoyingly, they were so bad that they made the Cardinals look good. So, yeah. And I feel sorry for the offensive coordinator. You know, he's gone there to kind of show how great he is, and it's just not going to work, is it?
No,
it's really not. Chiefs. Anyway,
it's really got. So let's see what we think could ring true this week. So Hannah, we're going to go to you for what you think.
I kind of picked this thing because I wasn't the first person to kind of put on their kind of wild card bet this week, but I quite liked kind of the theme, so I was like, I'm going to stick with it. So my wild card kind of bet this week is that the Browns are going to be at the top of the AFC North next week as the only team at the top with a 2-0 record.
Ooh. I'm frantically looking to see who the Browns are playing. The Browns are playing the Steelers.
Yeah, I think they're going to beat the Steelers.
That is not hard. Okay, the Steelers looked awful.
Yes, but currently they're at the top with the Ravens. So I am betting that they're going to win and the Bengals are going to win. But who would have thought? Well, okay. Who watched the AFC North would have thought that the Browns would be the top sole people at the top after 2 weeks? You know, come on, you would have thought Bengals or Ravens.
Who would have thought the Ravens would only score? The Bengals would only score 3 points in their
Yeah,
first
exactly.
game,
Nobody. Nobody on the planet.
Hannah's face is starting to turn to genuine anger at this running bit.
Well, I was really upset. Like, how can you play so terribly when you're meant to be a championship team? I mean, come on now. This is embarrassing. Like, and we needed that win. It's a divisional game.
Championship team.
Well, I think so. All right. First overall pick in the draft team.
Bench your $275 million QB.
Well, there's no point getting him more injured when you've already lost. No point.
No. So, Lewis, let's come to you because you obviously put your thing on the show sheet first, and me and Hannah have both followed suit with what you've decided to do. But yours is spice.
Yeah,
I'm going for really spicy ones this week, and it wasn't really intentionally. I was just having a look at the schedule for next week, and my take is that the Chiefs fall to 0-2. They are playing the Jags this week. The Jags looked really good against the Colts, Calvin Ridley especially, and Trevor Lawrence. I think, like, in our who could potentially finish at QB1 overall, and I think Trevor Lawrence MVP might be on the cards. I think they look fantastic. The Chiefs obviously didn't so much in the passing game. I think they could really fall to 0-2. I think it would be a huge shock if it happened. But yeah, I can see it.
Okay, can I ask you a question? If Travis Kelce is back this week, do you still stand by that statement?
Yeah, I think so. I think the hyperextension of the knee is probably something that, like, he might play through this week, but I don't think he'll be fully back to himself. And obviously the rest of the receiving core looked so dreadful that I think it might not even matter. I think you can't target Travis Kelce 30 times a game as much as they might like to. And the Jags linebacking core is actually pretty good these days. So actually, not that you can take Travis Kelce out of the game or anything. Travis Kelce is better than any linebacker in the NFL, but I think it could still happen even if Kelce's back on the field.
Yeah, I just wanted to. I don't think he's back this week, or if he is back, I think he's they limit his snap count and stuff like that. I just wanted to know your feelings was if he is back this week, do you still think that? Because I think the Chiefs are a completely different team with Travis Kelce because they actually have somebody who can catch the ball. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to know your opinion if you still stood by that if Kelce was back and lining up.
It's scary though, isn't it? Like how terrible they look without him. Like how important he is. Like it's worrying. He's getting old now.
He's 34. Like, you shouldn't be relying this much. I know that the argument is always Mahomes can elevate anyone, but you can't rely that much on a 34-year-old player.
But Mahomes.
But sorry, I was going to say, look at the Rams. Okay, the Rams have got Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp wasn't there this week, and they still had people that could catch the ball and still looked, very, very good. The Chiefs have got Travis Kelce, and you go, oh yeah, well, without Travis Kelce, they can still get the ball about. No, they can't.
This is what worries me. Like, Mahomes is awesome. He threw the ball to the right spot. Nobody could catch it. Like, he can't elevate you if you can't catch a ball.
Yeah.
It's scary. Like, I think for them, I would be really worried that, Travis Kelce is basically the only decent receiving weapon on that team.
Yeah, I would be as well. If I was a Chiefs fan like Mags, I'd be worried, you know. But yeah, so that brings me to mine. And I've followed the theme that everyone's gone for, and I'm saying the Rams go to 2-0 by beating the 49ers.
No.
It's spicy, but unrealistic is my response to that.
I like
Yeah.
it. I'd love to see it. The NFC West is an interesting little cycle where we always beat the Seahawks. The Seahawks always pull out against the 49ers. The 49ers always beat us, and everyone beats the Cardinals.
Not quite true, but yeah, okay. I'll let you have it. But honestly, you'll be joining me next week. Going, you called it, Paul. You called it.
What makes you think it? Just sort of the Rams' performance on offense this week.
I don't. So it's different. Okay, the Steelers looked garbage. Okay, the Steelers looked absolutely garbage. You know, Najee Harris had a run at one point for 24 yards, and that meant he was 22 overall on the week. You know, and they still, I don't know, the 49ers, I don't know if they didn't get into a stride or something like that, but it didn't seem like they had much of a challenge. You know, the Steelers did nothing on offense, and I don't think that was solely down to the 49ers. I think that was the Steelers and their offensive coordinator, is it Matt Canada? He's absolutely trash. Yeah. So I think if they've got somebody like Sean McVay, and he's a genius, okay? You can say what you want about him. The guy knows what he's doing. And I think the 49ers may struggle this week. And I think Aaron Donald is just going to munch Brock Purdy for dinner. Okay, he's just gonna now that Nick Bosa is now earning more money than him and he's the higher paid. I think Aaron Donald's going to go, I'm still the better player. Watch this.
That clip of him running at Geno Smith and Geno goes, "Oh my God," as he's screaming down on him is incredible.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. But yeah. So honestly, you know, and this is a hot take, you know, so that's my hot take. I think the Rams beat the 49ers, but that brings us to the end of the show. Have you guys?
Can I just say something before we finish?
No. We've
gone through nearly a whole hour without mentioning Rashid Shaheed.
Oh yeah, the sponsor of the show.
Exactly. I mean, I have to say his name because one, he sponsors us, but two, I hope after what I said last week, in that if you're the team that needs the extra points, you're kind of predicted to lose, I hope you put him in your flex spot, because guess where he finished this week, or so far anyway? He finished as a wide receiver 1, as the wide receiver 9 on the week. Come on now. Ding, 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 ding.
That wins us an extra. That wins us an extra £1,000 in our Rashid Shaheed sponsorship deal. Hooray!
Woo! Oh, it might have won somebody's week. Probably not. They probably didn't pay any attention to me. But I didn't. To be honest, I only used him as like a side example. Really, I didn't say starting.
No, have some conviction, Hannah.
I'm going with it and saying, I hope you listen to exactly what I said and put him in, because ding, 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 wide receiver 9, hopefully won you the week, unless you're playing against Tyreek Hill. Yay!
Can I finish the show now?
Yes. I just had to bring him up because I know that he'd be ringing me and saying, where was my name, had I not mentioned him.
Yeah, obviously. So with that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for tuning in, and be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at Wildcard Rewind, or head over to our YouTube channel and search for the Fantasy Wildcard Podcast Network, and make sure you give us a subscribe. But with that, that's the end of the show, and that we'll see you next week, where we chat all things week 2. Taking back to the sun.